corkboard, and not a weird conspiracy style video. Surprise. So I've been wanting to do a video on this for a while, and I can't really do a video just strictly on the 100 because it's got this problem, and it's something that I've noticed that differentiates between shows I really like and ones that I don't. Ones I have on the board: Titans, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Fear the Walking Dead, Doctor Who, Letterkenny, and this is the DC universe. This is all the DC shows. This isn't the cast for one show. This is a crossover. And so I want to go through each, and I before I do that, I want to discuss just something interesting with the 100 that has been bothering me. You have a core cast. You do. When you have a core cast that you know are pretty safe. But it treats so many characters like they're expendable that it is hard to get upset when certain characters die, and it makes it harder to get attached. Now, shows that go on for a long while and do well usually have a way of having a balance. Titans. Titans is only just past season 2, and season 3 is going to come. But the core cast is pretty well protected, although Beast Boy here, the arc in season 2 kind of went right over my head. I didn't really like it a whole lot, and she completely changes between season 1 and 2. She's a completely different character in season 2. So is she, and honestly, season 1 they never say the word Titans once, and in season 2 it's Titans, 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 Titans. So it just felt to me like it was a new showrunner, whole new writers, and they went in a completely different direction. That's how it felt. And that could be a bit problematic. So hopefully season 3 feels like season 2 and not a callback to season 1. But anyways, they have a good cast. I like it. I think Wonder Girl was a good character. We'll see what happens in season 3 if she sprouts back up or what happens. Hawkman and Hawkgirl, I thought there was an interesting storyline there as well. Although I want that to have run its course and go on to something else. There are some storylines that kind of drag a little bit. And this is a problem shows have as they go along. Now over here we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy, I think, had a perfect balance of, yes, characters will get killed off. Yes, there are going to be characters that you get attached to who leave the show. Yes, there's a rotation. But there's enough affection paid to the core cast. The only exception would probably be Tara. And of course, the way that they killed her off made a lot of people angry, myself included. But outside of that, honestly, the show did pretty darn well. Right up until the finish, it did pretty well, even though season 7 was a perfect spot to end it, because it starts getting kind of ridiculous. And for a show about vampires, it's saying a lot when it's starting to get ridiculous. But for me, Buffy is one of the best shows from start to finish, and the ensemble cast is really important. So you can have an episode that's completely about not Buffy, and it works. Where you're like, oh, it's a Xander episode. I'll stick around. That's often the test. And of course, we all know from watching Simpsons for years, Simpsons not up here, because how are you going to get an 8x10 picture just of the Simpsons? No. But if it's a Lisa episode, you find yourself going, I don't know. Am I going to sit through a Lisa episode? Do I feel like sitting through a Lisa episode? And usually they're weekly written. They have Lisa doing something Lisa wouldn't normally do, just so that there's a storyline, whether it's smoking or breaking all kinds of rules and being a bad girl for the one episode, whatever it is. It's just usually something that you're kind of like, I could live without this episode. And so I don't find that with Buffy. I didn't find that if they were delving into something with Faith, or they were delving into something going on with Willow and Buffy was barely in it, that the show lost anything. In fact, if anything, at the point where Buffy gets killed off and comes back, I thought they should have waited a little bit longer to bring Buffy back. I thought they had some interesting storylines going on without Buffy technically being in it at all. Even though they had the Buffy bot, which was weird and dorky and cheesy. But it worked for the show. So that was fine. Now I've got Fear the Walking Dead over here for a good reason. Now when Fear the Walking Dead started out, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was better than The Walking Dead, and I used to do videos on this channel where I talked about Fear the Walking Dead. I really liked it. And then they started killing off the cast. Now, that's going to happen in a zombie show. But eventually, you throw your hands up and go, so what else you got? all right, that's it. So when the show clearly was going to go towards being centered around Morgan, I checked out. I was like, you know what? This show started out as one thing, and now you get a different showrunner, and you're going to completely change the whole mood and everything. And you're going to make it so that all the central characters aren't central anymore, and you're going to make it feel exactly like The Walking Dead, the show that this was an offshoot from. Forget it. And that was where I was. And so even though Alicia's still in it, I've read spoilers that they may be killing her off. And of course, she's played by Alicia Demnam Carey. The interesting thing about that too is that when her character meets her ultimate demise in the 100, it felt tacked on to me. It felt like, oh, so her character, she was done with her contract then. It didn't feel like it was. And I don't know if it's part of the original books. It might very well be, but it felt kind of odd to me. It was kind of an off moment. And as much as I love the actress, I think she's fantastic. I'm not going to watch Fear the Walking Dead just for her. It's not going to happen. And as soon as they killed off the rest of the family, although reportedly Nick wanted to leave the show, yeah, I was like, nah. If they don't, part of it is if the writers don't care about the characters, why should we as viewers, right? This is a problem that some shows have. Now, down here with the DC shows, they've done a very good job of, again, you cycle characters in, you cycle characters out. Most of the shows have been good about who comes in and who goes. Now, Supergirl, I could single out. I don't know if Supergirl in there. Not in this crossover. Nope, she's right there. She's right in the middle. Supergirl gets a pass because they started out on CBS and then they moved to CW. So when the show completely changed its tone, it had to, because it was going to CW and it was going to become part of this universe. Legends of Tomorrow gets it right. Legends of Tomorrow, you have characters rotated in, rotated out. Sometimes they're killed off, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just happy to leave. And it does that to keep the show fresh. And I think it does it very, very well. I think the show is fresh. There are a lot of people on here who either they don't wear the same outfits they wore then, so they don't wear the same superhero gear, or they're completely changed characters altogether, or they're gone. And I think it's important to make sure you're rotating out of the cast and rotating in order to keep things fresh. On that note, Letterkenny is fan-flippantastic. The wonderful thing with Letterkenny is you have, and it's a Canadian show, and if you haven't watched it, you need to. As long as you can identify, as long as you're okay with some swearing, and the fact that Jared Kiesel's backside is regularly seen when he's being shoresy. But if you can handle those two things, it is an absolutely great show for the Ensemble cast, which is what I'm getting at here. The Ensemble cast is important to me in order to keep me interested in the show. I need to see various characters who are well thought out, not just the main character and then everybody else just kind of there, which I think sometimes the 100 suffers through. I think sometimes you have this character in Clark that's kind of well thought out at points. Sometimes she's not. But then Octavia might become kind of cartoony in the way she's portrayed. Bellamy kind of is all over the place. And this is where I kind of get lost with the show. You don't see that with Letterkenny. And the nice thing with it, too, is that since they're short seasons and it's very Canadian in how it's presented, you can have a season without Gale. You can have a season without Tanis. You can have a season without a lot of the tertiary characters, and then bring them back in for the next season, and it doesn't matter. It's a small town. They're a bunch of Hicks hockey players and skids, and so if a character disappears for a season and comes back for the following season, it's fine. You don't have to have some big emotional send-off. Yeah, Wayne's girlfriend changes basically almost every year. They go off and they fight with people up in Quebec. Oh, the greatest fishing in Quebec. You gotta love fishing in Quebec. And, it's great. Everything in this show is fantastic. This is obviously your main four. They're going to be in every episode. But, for instance, when Katie went off to the city, it's fine. You've got everybody else there. So, it wouldn't have mattered if she'd stayed out the entire season. You've got the rest of the cast. Everything's fine. As much as I love the character, and I love the actress that plays the character as well. I think she's fantastic. And I think what's nice is that when these two were doing the casting for the show, they had people come in and read, and then people coming in and read for the parts that they had in their mind totally different person to play the role, and somebody comes in and reads for it, and they go, "That's theirs. That's perfect." And then they allow the character to be portrayed by these people that they just didn't see us being the character initially, and yet it works. But it's a great show, and it's always fun to see actors from this show on other shows. McMurray's on like Transplant this week, and I just look and I go, it's McMurray. And that's always a good sign too. I went through that with Twin Peaks when the original Twin Peaks series went off the air. I'd be scrolling through the channels or watching a movie and go, hey, look, it's Wyndham Earle. Yeah, it's Cooper. Oh, hey, that's Sheriff Truman. And that's a key thing too. When you watch another TV show and you go, oh, hey, it's Buffy, and you don't think of the actress first, you think of the character, that tells you they had a really well-written character and they were probably on a very memorable show. The last one here is Doctor Who, and I saved Doctor Who for last for a simple reason, and I'm wearing the Doctor Who jersey for this reason as well. Doctor Who, 15 years ago, was absolutely fantastic, and each member of the cast was well-written. Each member of the cast was sometimes cycled in or cycled out, looking at you, Mickey, and it worked. And it absolutely worked. And the TARDIS never really felt crowded. Even when you had all of them there, it still didn't feel crowded. And it was a cast that you could root for or root against, looking at you, Martha. But you could also really get into it when certain characters would show up out of the blue. And that's where I look at Jack Harkness. And now with where the show is, I don't get any of that connection. I don't have an emotional connection with Doctor Who now like I did then. When I went through and binge watched Doctor Who, and I went from season 1 right through to season 7, and it took me months to get there. And I'm talking like a couple of months to get through 7 seasons. The connection I had with this cast was huge. It was just what a great cast. And then I look at where they are now with the multiple the multiple companions that I don't really care a lot for, and I don't get the feeling that the Doctor really does either, even though I'm sure that the character's meant to. It just doesn't feel the same as it did back then. Where you'd see Rose and the Doctor together and you go, there's something there, isn't there? And yet if you go back and rewatch it, you realize David Tennant's Doctor was just a womanizer. He fell in love a couple of times that had nothing to do with Rose whatsoever before she was off the TARDIS. And yet what we remember is that Rose and the Doctor were in love with each other, even though they really weren't. She was in love with him, yes. His being in love with her was, I don't know, it didn't seem to be that way. I can think of 2 episodes in particular where he was in love with somebody else. Now, there's the one I'm trying to think of which one that was. There was the one episode, The Girl in the Fireplace, which was with Rose, where he fell in love with somebody else. And then there was the season after, which was the 2-parter where he fell in love while Martha's standing around pining over him. I'm trying to think. And then there was the other one. A lot of womanizing with David Tennant. I mean, he's a beautiful man, so sure, I get it. But another show I don't have up here is Supernatural. Supernatural cycled people in and out. I did get mad at Supernatural at certain points, especially during those first 5 seasons where I would become attached to a character and then they get killed off to advance the storyline. I was like, that's just mean. That's not nice. And I do agree with the one criticism Supernatural's had over the years, and I kind of agree with it, is a woman on Supernatural is probably going to die a horrible, violent death. And that's pretty much been the case almost the whole way through. The only way to avoid one is just have your memory wiped and not even know Sam and Dean exist. If Sam loves you or Dean loves you, you're probably going to die. It's probably going to be horrible. But yeah, I think an ensemble cast is really, really important to making a show memorable. Because again, Fear the Walking Dead, I think, where their ratings were down last year, I think it's really honestly because sometimes the writers don't respect the attachment that a fan can have towards the cast itself, where they say, okay, well, we can kill off these characters as long as we keep that one. And one thing that really drives me nuts, and I've mentioned this about The Walking Dead in the past, is when they try to bump off a character just to increase interest in a show and just for shock value, I think most viewers will see through that and go, wow, that's cheap. That's cheap. When it's something random, and I'm again looking over here at Buffy, when they kill off Willow's girlfriend, it just felt cheap. It just felt like it was this moment, and I understand it was to make Willow the big villain, but it didn't feel... It felt out of place with the rest of the show, and it was tough. It was tough to, because they make you care about this relationship, and then... And with The Walking Dead, for me, it was They make Glenn disappear, and you spend half a season going, oh, I wonder if Glenn's okay. And then Glenn shows up, yeah, I'm all right. And then a couple episodes later, he's getting his head bashed in with a bat, and you go, what are we doing here? Why am I spending my time? I worried about Glenn for half of a season, and you fake us out to think he's dead, and then he's not. And then a couple episodes later, you kill him off anyways. And the writers will always say, well, that's so that you don't feel that anybody's safe. Daryl, Maggie, Rick, Carol, people are safe. There are definitely people that are safe. And if you're going to do that, then fine, just kill everybody off every other episode and watch as the viewers stream out the other way. But I think it's important to have a really good ensemble cast. I also want to throw in, I don't have anything up here of Lucifer, but we're now, I think, 4 episodes into season 2. Absolutely really, really well written show. And what I like with Lucifer, if you haven't watched it, I will recommend it. It's on Netflix. Is that it starts off where everybody kind of feels like a cartoony, over the top character, and everybody's kind of comic booky in the way they're written. And now that we're into season 2, everybody is a really fully fleshed out character, and you kind of care about everybody, even the shrink. I was like, well, the shrink's not going to be around for very long. She's just there for, oh, all right, and she's a well fleshed out. I really enjoy it. I really do. Amenadiel, I thought was kind of a joke in the beginning. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this guy. But yeah, I really do. And Mazikeen as well. Like, all of these characters, they turn from comic book to reality. And I understand Lucifer's based on a comic book. But I like how it's written. And I like how it gradually turns them, and they become more down-to-earth human beings. And that's important in an ensemble cast. So here's a question for you wonderful people out there. Which show had a good ensemble cast all the way through? Which one has a really good ensemble cast now? I'm thinking of Cheers. Cheers had a great ensemble cast all the way through. It was absolutely fantastic. Right down to Paul. Paul, a non-consequential character, but absolutely hilarious. He had his moments. And then there's shows that the ensemble cast kind of fails the longer the show goes. And I'm looking at the Big Bang Theory there, where it turns from quirky nerd characters to just everybody's a complete jerk. Everybody's a jerk to one another. And the other show that was guilty of this as well was The Office. As The Office went along, I'm into season 6 of rewatching The Office, and people just start becoming awful to one another. Especially Pam. I was absolutely stunned at just how horrible Pam was in a couple episodes. I'm like, she really turns into a jerk. And it was off-putting. And yet Michael is such a complete and total jerk in some of those. And then Jim is a total, and all of them. And then somehow Dwight kind of turns into the most normal, likable person in the office. Because when he's like, I'm going to get Jim fired, you're going, yeah, he probably should. He probably should. I don't think Jim's working in that office at all. I don't think he's done a damn thing. So that's a problem. That's absolutely a problem. And so that's an example. Good. Cheers is good. And an example with Cheers would be when you went from Shelley Long, and then Rebecca comes in, and Rebecca was fantastic. Coach passes away, tragic passing. Woody comes in. Woody's fantastic. So other shows would stumble through this. When Phil Hartman passed away, News Radio could not recover. John Lovitz, as much as he might have tried it, just didn't recover. And so that's that balancing act. I don't know who could have replaced Phil Hartman. I'm being completely honest. I don't think anybody could, but it's an impossible task. But which shows do you really like the ensemble cast from, and which one do you agree with me on Fear the Walking Dead, or do you disagree with me and The Walking Dead in general? And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. It means a lot. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yes, the cork board's been put to use, and I didn't look crazy in front of it. There you go. There's a surprise for you. Thank you guys so much for everything. I will talk to you again soon.